Okay, moving on to yield to maturity, the interest rate that makes the present value of the bond payments equal to its price is the yield to maturity. So it's the present value of the bond's payments equal to its price. So what we're solving for is R here. So we're looking for the interest rate. So the bond's price is a sum from the time 1 to the end of time, which is the coupon discounted back plus the par value. We've done this before. And we get the example of an 8% coupon 30-year bond selling for $12.76. What is its average rate of return? So now we're solving for I, if you have your calculator handy. Of course, we can do that on a spreadsheet or even in regular math in a calculator. Is 1276.76. We've got T from 1 to 60. $40 is the coupon. Where did we get the coupon? 8%. 8% of a $1,000 bond is $80. Divide by 2, you get 40. We have a $1,000 coupon. We have 60 payments here. We have the term is T. So R is the equivalent of 6% per half the year. And so if we solve for the bond equivalent yield of 6% and we get the annual return of that, we take it to 6.09 because it's going to compound for the semi-annual payment. This is an example of yield to maturity. And of course, you can solve this also on your calculator. Bond's internal rate of return is the yield to maturity. And so the interest rate is what makes the present value of a bond's payment equal to its price. The current yield is the bond's annual coupon payment divided by the bond price. So for premium bonds, the coupon rate is going to be greater than the current yield, which is going to be greater than the yield to maturity. And of course, for discount bonds, is exactly the opposite. Bonds in yield to call. Now, yield to call is the bonds are callable. If you have a callable bond, they can be called by the terms or the indentures of the contract. If the interest rate falls, the price of a straight bond can rise considerably. The price of a callable bond is flat over the range of low interest rates because the risk of repurchase or call is high. But when interest rates are high, the risk of a call is negligible because the values of the straight and callable bond converge. So we need to see a picture of that. I think this will help quite a bit. So we can see our $1,000 bond is a straight bond and a callable bond. If we have a interest rate here over time, or an interest rate here at the bottom and prices along the top, we can see that the callable bond here would be over higher interest rates would be very close to the straight bond, but over lower interest rates, it could get called. And of course, the straight bond price would go much higher, but you would never get it that high for a callable bond because the bond would be called. So once the interest rates start to fall, well, why would a bond be called if the interest rates fall? It's because the owner has 7% loan out there and interest rates are now 4%. So what do? They call the bond and say, I'm going to reissue them at 4% instead of paying 7%. So the value of a callable bond gets flatlined, where a straight bond that couldn't be called would go way up in value. So that's the difference between the callable bonds and the straight debt or straight bond. A couple of assumptions. Of course, there's reinvestment assumptions. When you have a callable bond, you're not going to be able to reinvest your money at the same level that you had it at. Again, going back to this example, if you owned the 7% bond and it got called at 4%, there's a reinvestment rate risk that you will not be earning this 3% on that money as you go back into the market and try to invest that money again. Also, the holding period return changes in rates affect returns. The reinvestment of coupon payments, of course, reinvested, and of course, the change in the bond price, were you to sell before maturity, will affect your holding period return. So we've touched a little bit on callable bonds and the difference between callable bonds and yield to maturity and current yield, and also a little bit on realized yield and the risks that are involved in that. Let's move on to how we look at bonds over time when we invest them.